The morning Rebecca Harlow pulled me aside 10 minutes before walking down the aisle, I learned that some people spend their whole lives making the safe choice until the moment they realize safe was just another word for wrong. Ethan Cole, 38, furniture restorer specializing in mid-century pieces, standing in a stone chapel vestibule while the woman he had loved since college told him she was about to marry the wrong man. He had thought the hardest part of the day would be sitting through the ceremony with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He had been incorrect. Ethan had known Rebecca for 17 years. They met sophomore year at a state university neither of them could really afford, in a philosophy seminar that was supposed to be an easy credit and turned into the kind of class where people actually argued about the readings. Rebecca had opinions about Kant that made the professor uncomfortable. Ethan had opinions about Rebecca that made himself uncomfortable. They became friends, the kind of friends who studied together at 2 a.m, who showed up at each other's dorm rooms with coffee and complaints, who knew each other's class schedules and childhood disappointments and secret ambitions. They were close. They were careful. They never crossed the line. After graduation, they stayed in touch the way people do when they mean it. Texts on birthdays. Coffee twice a year when Rebecca came back to visit her parents. Long phone calls that never quite said what they meant. Ethan opened his restoration shop in a converted garage on the east side of town. Rebecca moved to Chicago, took a corporate job she hated, met a man named Andrew Keswick who worked in wealth management and wore suits that cost more than Ethan's truck. Andrew was polished, confident, successful in ways that were easy to measure. He proposed after 14 months. Rebecca said yes. Ethan heard about it through a mutual friend and spent the rest of that week sanding a dresser down to bare wood with more aggression than the piece required. The wedding was set for early October at a small chapel outside the city, the kind of venue that looked good in photographs and charged extra for everything. Ethan received an invitation in the mail, his name written in calligraphy he knew Rebecca had not chosen herself. He RSVP'd yes because saying no would have required an explanation he did not want to give. He bought a gift, a vintage silver frame he had restored and polished until it looked new. He told himself he was happy for her. He told himself a lot of things. The day of the wedding was cold and clear, the kind of autumn morning that felt like a painting someone had worked too hard on. Ethan arrived at the chapel 40 minutes early, parked in the gravel lot beside cars that cost more than his annual income, and sat in his truck trying to remember why he had thought this was a good idea. Through the windshield he could see guests arriving, women in dresses that looked expensive and uncomfortable, men in dark suits checking their phones, everyone performing the same polite indifference weddings seemed to require. Ethan checked his tie in the rearview mirror, decided it was crooked and left it that way, and walked into the chapel like a man heading to his own execution. The interior was all white stone and stained glass, wooden pews arranged in neat rows, flowers everywhere in shades of cream and blush that probably had names he did not know. Ethan found a seat 3 rows from the back on the bride's side and sat down beside a couple he did not recognize. Organ music played softly from somewhere he could not see. People whispered. Ethan stared at the altar and wondered how long he had to stay before it would be acceptable to leave. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned. Rebecca's younger sister Emma stood in the aisle, her bridesmaid dress a soft gray, her expression unreadable. Ethan, Rebecca wants to see you. Ethan blinked. Now? Right now. Come on. Emma did not wait for him to argue. She turned and walked toward a side door near the front of the chapel. Ethan followed because he did not know what else to do. The door led to a small vestibule that smelled like old books and furniture polish. Rebecca stood near a narrow window, her wedding dress a long sweep of ivory lace, her dark hair pinned in soft curls, her hands twisting together like she was trying to break her own fingers. She looked beautiful. She looked terrified. When she saw Ethan, something in her face cracked. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Emma slipped out and closed the door behind her. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Rebecca, what is going on?" She crossed the room in 3 steps and stopped too close enough that he could see the fine tremor in her shoulders, the careful makeup that did not quite hide how pale she was. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen, because if I stop talking, I am not going to be able to say it." Ethan nodded. "Okay." Rebecca took a breath. "I am about to walk down that aisle and marry a man I do not love. Not the way I should, not the way that matters. Andrew is good to me. He is successful and stable, and everyone thinks we are perfect together. My parents adore him. My friends are jealous. On paper, this makes sense. But Ethan, I have been standing in this dress for 20 minutes, trying to convince myself that good enough is the same as right, and I cannot do it anymore. Rebecca, I am not finished." Her voice shook. "Do you remember senior year, the night before graduation when we sat on the roof of your apartment building and talked until the sun came up?" Ethan remembered. He had spent 17 years remembering. Yes. You told me you were terrified of ending up like your father, working a job you hated just to pay bills, never taking a risk, never building anything that mattered. You said you would rather fail at something you loved than succeed at something that made you numb. And I told you I admired that, but I could never be that brave. She looked at him, her eyes bright. I have spent my entire adult life making the safe choice. The corporate job, the right neighborhood, the man my mother approves of. And I am so tired, Ethan. I am so tired of being the person everyone expects me to be. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Why are you telling me this now? Rebecca stepped closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Because it should have been you. The words hung in the air between them, impossibly large, impossibly true. Ethan stared at her, his mind blank, his pulse loud in his ears. What? It should have been you, Rebecca said again, and this time her voice broke. It has always been you. I have been lying to myself for 17 years, pretending what we had was just friendship, telling myself I was doing the smart thing by choosing someone safe. But I do not want safe, Ethan. I want the person who knows me. I want the person I think about when I wake up. I want you. Ethan could not breathe. He could not think. He could only stand there, staring at the woman he had loved since he was 20 years old, the woman who was supposed to be getting married in less than 10 minutes, and try to process the fact that she had just said the thing he had been too afraid to say for nearly 2 decades. Rebecca, you are about to get married. I know. There are 200 people out there waiting for you to walk down that aisle. I know. Your fiancé is standing at the altar. I know. She pressed her hands to her face, her breath coming fast. I know, Ethan. I know how insane this is. I know I should have said something years ago. I know I should have been braver. But I am saying it now, and I need you to tell me if I am completely alone in this or if you have ever felt the same way. Ethan looked at her, at the woman who had been his best friend, his constant what if, and realized that careful had cost him 17 years. You are not alone. Rebecca lowered her hand slowly. What? You are not alone, Ethan said again, and his voice was steadier than he expected. I have been in love with you since the night we met. I have spent 17 years convincing myself it was better to keep you as a friend than risk losing you completely. I told myself you deserved someone better, someone who had his life together, someone who was not restoring furniture in a garage and living in a studio apartment with a dog he found in a parking lot. I thought if I stayed quiet, you would be happy. I thought that was enough. Rebecca was crying now, quiet tears that smudged her mascara. You are an idiot. I know. I do not care about the apartment or the garage or any of it. I never did. I know. She reached for his hands, lacing her fingers through his, and held on like she was drowning. What do I do, Ethan? Ethan squeezed her hands gently. You do what you should have done 17 years ago. You tell the truth. Andrew will hate me. Probably. My parents will be furious. Definitely. Everyone out there is going to think I have lost my mind. They might be right. Ethan pulled her closer, his hands framing her face, his thumbs brushing away tears that kept coming. But you will be telling the truth, Rebecca. You will be choosing the thing that matters instead of the thing that looks right. And maybe that is terrifying, but it is better than spending the rest of your life wishing you had been brave enough to try. Rebecca closed her eyes, leaning into his hands, and for a moment they just stood there, breathing together, holding on. When she opened her eyes again, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder, clearer. If I do this, I am choosing you. I am choosing us, and I need to know you are not going to run. I'm not going to run, Ethan said. Promise me. I promise. She kissed him. It was desperate and messy and tasted like salt, and Ethan kissed her back like he had been waiting his entire life for permission. When they finally pulled apart, Rebecca rested her forehead against his and laughed, a shaky, disbelieving sound. I am about to ruin my own wedding. Yes, Ethan said. You are. This is the worst decision I have ever made. Or the best. Rebecca pulled back, wiped her eyes, and straightened her shoulders. Will you wait for me? I've been waiting for 17 years. I can wait a little longer. She nodded, took a breath, and walked to the door. Ethan watched her go, his heart hammering, his hands shaking, and wondered if he had just witnessed the bravest thing he would ever see. Rebecca walked back into the chapel. Ethan could not see what happened next, but he heard it. The organ music stopped. There was a long, terrible silence, and then the sound of voices rising in confusion. A door slammed. Someone shouted. Ethan stood in the vestibule staring at the wall and waited. 10 minutes later, the side door opened again. Rebecca stood there, still in her wedding dress, her face blotchy and red, her hair coming loose from its pins. I did it. Ethan crossed the room. What did you say? I told Andrew I could not marry him. I told him I was in love with someone else. I told everyone I was sorry, and I walked out. She started crying again, harder this time. He looked at me like I had stabbed him. My mother will not speak to me. Half the guests think I have had a breakdown. Emma is the only one who hugged me. Ethan pulled her into his arms and held her while she shook. You did the right thing. It does not feel right. It feels like I just destroyed everything. You did not destroy everything. You told the truth. That is not the same thing. He pulled back far enough to look at her. What do you want to do now? Rebecca wiped her eyes on the back of her hand, smearing makeup across her knuckles. I want to get out of this dress. I want to leave this building. I want to go somewhere quiet where no one is staring at me like I am a disaster. I can do that, Ethan said. They left through a side exit that led to the gravel parking lot. A few guests saw them and stared, but no one tried to stop them. Ethan opened the passenger door of his truck, helped Rebecca climb in despite the dress, and drove away from the chapel with no particular destination in mind. They ended up at a state park 10 miles outside town, a small clearing near a creek where Ethan used to come when he needed to think. He parked under a tree, turned off the engine, and sat in silence while Rebecca stared out the windshield. I just left my own wedding, she said finally. Yes, I am a runaway bride. I am a cliché. You are brave. Ethan reached over and took her hand. You are the bravest person I know. Rebecca looked down at their joined hands, then back at him. What happens now? I do not know, Ethan admitted. But I know I am not going anywhere. I know I have loved you for 17 years, and I am not about to stop now. I know we have a lot to figure out, and it is going to be messy, and people are going to judge us. But I also know that I would rather figure it out with you than spend the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. Rebecca squeezed his hand. I do not have anywhere to live. Andrew and I shared an apartment in Chicago. I cannot go back there. You can stay with me. Your studio apartment with the dog you found in a parking lot? His name is Sawdust, and yes. She laughed, a real laugh this time, and it was the best sound Ethan had heard all day. This is insane. Completely. I love you, Rebecca said, and it was the first time she had said it out loud. I love you too, Ethan said, and he meant it more than he had ever meant anything. They sat in the truck until the sun started to set, talking about everything and nothing, making plans that were half serious and half hopeful. Rebecca called her sister and asked her to pack a bag and bring it to Ethan's shop. Emma arrived an hour later with a suitcase, a bottle of wine, and a hug that lasted a full minute. You are either the bravest or the stupidest person I know, Emma said. I have not decided which. Can it be both? Rebecca asked. Definitely both. Ethan and Rebecca spent that night in his studio apartment drinking wine out of mismatched glasses, eating pizza that was cold by the time they remembered to eat it, and talking until 3 a.m. Rebecca changed out of the wedding dress and into jeans and one of Ethan's shirts. Sawdust, a scruffy terrier mix with one ear that did not stand up correctly, curled up between them on the couch and fell asleep. It was not elegant. It was not what anyone had planned. It was perfect. In the months that followed, Rebecca found a new job, a smaller firm that valued her skills without demanding her soul. Ethan expanded his restoration business, taking on bigger projects, hiring an assistant, finally moving out of the garage and into a proper workshop. They moved into a 2-bedroom house with a backyard big enough for Sawdust to dig holes in. They fought sometimes about dishes and schedules and who had forgotten to buy milk. They figured it out. A year and a half after the wedding that never happened, Ethan proposed in the clearing by the creek where they had sat in his truck and planned their impossible future. He did not have a ring. He did not have a speech. He just looked at Rebecca and said, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Rebecca said yes before he finished the question. They were married 3 months later in the same clearing with 20 people in attendance, Sawdust as the ring bearer, and vows they wrote themselves. Rebecca wore a simple white dress that zipped up the side. Ethan wore the same suit he had worn to her almost wedding and felt no guilt about it whatsoever. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Ethan kissed her like he had been given a second chance he did not deserve and was not about to waste it. The morning Rebecca pulled him aside and told him it should have been him, Ethan had thought he was about to watch the woman he loved marry someone else. He had not known he was about to get everything he had ever wanted. Looking back, he realized that bravery was not the absence of fear. It was choosing the truth even when the truth was terrifying. Sometimes the safe choice is just the slow way to lose everything that matters. Sometimes you have to be willing to ruin your own wedding to save your own life. What would you have done if someone told you they were marrying the wrong person 10 minutes before the ceremony? And have you ever been too afraid to tell someone the truth until it was almost too late? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.